Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, I recently got a comment asking for some tanky builds. So I started theory crafting, and I was like, hey, you know what? I haven't played Shattered Lance Werebear in a little bit, But then I was like thinking about it, and I was like, I kind of like played that the other day, to be honest, now that I think about it. So I went and looked at the guide, and fuck. So, we're going to be talking about Shattered Lance Werebear. If you don't know how this build works, essentially we're building around the Shard of the Shattered Lance. This set essentially forces you to invest a very large portion of your affixes into health regen, which causes a lot of problems for your gearing as you have a bunch of health regen, but you have no way of getting EHP because you can have all the sustain in the world, but if you're not tanky enough to take a one shot, right, you're just going to die anyways. And because of the relic, right, taking the relic slot, you can't just throw on like like a vessel or whatever, right, and like get a bunch of ward. So you have to be very tactical in how you utilize this item. Now, before we get into that, if you haven't already yet, heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of supporting me currently. And you can also, of course, join my Twitch stream. It'll be down in the description below as well. I'm currently trying to get to 20K subscribers here soon. We're at like almost 18K, which I'm very proud of. It's amazing that we're zooming so fast. It's great to have such a loving community behind this game. Yeah, let's talk about the build now, shall we? So the idea with Shadowlands Werebear is you use the set, right? And you stack a bunch of health regen. This has been buffed significantly since the last time I played it, mainly due to the swipe rework. So, the swipe rework has given us three different scaling options. The first thing being aspect of the saber tooth or whatever it's called. Essentially, these give you a bunch of more damage, up to 35% more damage for all of your attacks and stuff. It's global more damage. That means that the maul that we're utilizing for, of course, Shattered Lance stuff, right? Because the idea is the Shard of the Shattered Lance has no attack speed on it, has no base crit, has no crit multi, meaning that the kind of builds that we utilize it on are very niche and very few and far between. But thankfully, Maul hits all those check boxes. It has base crit, it has plenty of more damage to scale the shard, it doesn't care about attack speed as much, so all of that combined makes Maul a worthy use for Shard of the Shattered Lance. Now, of course, Swipe, giving you 35% more global damage, buffs this playstyle significantly. Now, of course, with the Swipe rework, we got a few other toys. Specifically, we got like 3% crit multi per stack, or however much crit multi per stack. I think it's 12%, but that's doubled while we're dual wielding. And we are utilizing two Shard of the Shattered Lances because, there's no other weapons that would be better for us, right? Meaning that we get a very large amount of critical strike multiplier. We get well over like 400 to 500% critical strike multiplier, which means that, of course, Maul hits like a truck, as you can see in the footage. Now, another thing that I've been focusing on with this build recently with the new adaptations is we found that it turns out if you run a bunch of AoE in terms of your maul on your gear and of course through the skill tree and all that, this means that you can essentially war cry, pull things into your maul AoE, and then maul on top of them and kill most things. This wasn't really possible before, mainly because you didn't have enough plus levels, you didn't have enough like stats to put around. The increased area affix didn't exist back then as well. So back then it was kind of a lot more pain champ, but now we're a Giga Chad. We literally walk up to a pack, we war cry, we pull everything in, and we maul, and everything is dead. It's great. And of course, as long as if there's anything that's a little bit more tanky than normal, all we got to do is swipe it a few times, get a few stacks, and then we can kill it anyways, right? And that has become a very satisfying build. I really couldn't just leave it down. Like, I accidentally recorded like twice the amount of footage that I would normally record for a build because of how entertaining this build is. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is another development that we've made with this build ever since the last time I played it, and that is the new helmet. Now, this helmet here, no, not many people utilize it, Call of the Tundra. That is because for the most part, it's a very niche helmet, but it does one thing and one thing very good only, and that is having HP flat on it, right? This is well over like a tier 6 flat HP roll, right? And it also has like a tier 6-ish or tier like 5, 6-ish roll for health regen per second. And normally this wouldn't be that strong, but it gets a little bit absurd when you can get LP on it and, of course, roll it with an extra roll of HP regen. The reason why this is so important, right, is because of the fact that we do not want to be putting flat HP regen on our gear. I know that's crazy. The HP regen stacking build doesn't want to put a flat HP regen on its build. Why is that? Well, we have to scale some EHP because we can't just be running around as 2k health as a werebear. We have to tank things from T4 Jurla. We have to tank random Ra slams. Like, we have to tank those things. So getting as much flat HP regen on one slot while it's also giving us a lot of flat HP, that's value right there. That is insane value. Now, the last thing that makes this build even possible is thankfully with the swipe rework, with the aspect of the Sabertooth stacks, we can get well over like 400% increased health regen percent for free. And this just ties the whole build together, as this allows you to go from like 500 regen standing in town all the way to 1k regen standing in town. Because turns out when you have a bunch of flat HP regen on your gear and you're not really building percent HP regen, and you just throw in a different source of HP regen that isn't, mandatory on your gear, all of a sudden the build starts working much better than before. But yeah, we're still technically ZDPS in theory for most characters' stake. Although for some reason, I don't know why, it seems like as though I do trigger boss DR sometimes. It's kind of weird. But overall, the build has been great. It's the tank that people have been wanting. You regen 1k HP per second. You can still kill bosses in a decent amount of time. And it's about what people are running. With all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build some more, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. Let's go over the skill, shall we? So we have Werebear right here. We take 5 points into Rip and Tear for that 60% more juicy damage. 2 points travel to Army Sunderer. 4 points into the base crit here, and 200% global crit chance. This makes it so that essentially we have 100% crit chance with our Maul, which is very important as we have no crit on our shards here, right? And not much crit on our gear, which means we definitely need to have as much crit as humanly possible to make sure that we're capped on crit. And thankfully, Insatiable makes this very easy to do so. Then we take 1 point travel and invigoration, although this is very important. This combined with the reduced rage recovery on the tree, like on the passive tree here it is. This reduced rage decay and the 2 rage on, the 3 rage on crit, and then where is it here? And then this node is enough to maintain your rage while on monoliths and on bosses. That's all you need. You don't need anything more than that. As long as you're, maintaining your rage well. We take 3 points travel to Bloodthirst, don't really care about the bleed chance. Then 1 point into Skull Crusher, so we benefit from Fury Leap Tree, which we'll get in a moment. Then 2 points into Fury of the Maul for a cooldown recovery speed. The more cooldown recovery speed we get for our Maul here, the more damage we're going to be doing on single target. Now, of course, there is kind of a limit to that because you end up getting a bunch of uh, what is it called? You end up having diminishing returns very quickly for cooldown recovery speed, so I wouldn't put too much on it. Then we're actually grabbing 2 points in territorial. Why are we doing that? If we get plus the levels to Werebear, we also want to get more points into this. That is because the bigger the AoE of our roar, the bigger the pull area is. So, for instance, we have the decent distance here with Apprehend, but then the bigger the area of the war cry specifically. So, for instance, if I pull an enemy like this far, right? Now I want, like, if my work rate hits over here, we'll pull them this far, and then if the enemy is right here, I'll pull them this far, right? You definitely want the AOE on the war cry, and that on top of the Maul means that essentially you can kill a very large amount of enemies at once, which improves your efficiency of doing monolith gameplay. So this area is very good, and eventually when you get plus levels to skills, you definitely want this. Now, swipe here, we take 5 points in aspect of the Panther, 1 point here travel into Feline Hunter, although the attack speed is nice, 2 points into Lion Strength, that gives us 35% more global damage while we're stacking up our stacks. Then 5 points into Sabertooth's Endurance. This gives us an enormous, and I mean enormous, like 600 like percent regen. Like this is absolutely absurd, and it takes our regen from like 400 all the way to 1,000. It is like one of the best buffs in the game for this build. It's really, really strong. Now, of course, we have this point as well. We get 24% uh, crit multi per stack of Aspect of the Panther. We have 7 stacks, so that is about 168% free crit multi. That is essentially most of our crit multi. You could get crit multi on your chest and eventually your helmet if you got a better helmet, but my chest is really bad, so of course, yada yada yada. So that's pretty much it for swipe. Now let's talk about Fury Leap here. Fury Leap, since we're utilizing Skull Crusher, this means that Fury Leap's tree benefits Maul. So we get all this more damage from Maul here. We get the base crit for Maul, we get the cooldown recovery speed, and that's going to be on top of everything that we get from Fury Leap. So you take 4 points in the Panther Strike for that juicy cooldown recovery speed and more damage. This is a lot of extra damage for us because we'll let us spam our Maul, then 1 point to Hero's Protection. This makes it so you can tank a lot of boss abilities like Rye slams and stuff like that if you Maul at the right time. Lots of free avoidance. 4 points into Crater. We want as much AoE as humanly possible. We don't really care about the minus mana cost. We just care about the AoE. 5 points into Savage Impact for that massive 30% more damage, on top of course, 15% health leech. This, on top of our health regen, keeps us topped off on bosses very easily. We get hit really hard by Araya. Guess what? We hit them back, and we leech our entire health bar back, which is great. 1 point travel to Windhammer, because one of the problems with Maul is we don't actually travel that far, and I don't know how much a meter is in Last Epoch currently, because no idea, right? So that's like whatever. Then 5 points into Brutal Impact for a lot of extra crit multi, which helps us scale our damage in the end game. Now we can talk about Warcry here. Warcry, stereotypical Warcry setup. We want to apprehend the staggering war so we can bring enemies closer to us so we can maul them. You want Shallow Breath so we get the lower cooldown so we can spam it. We want 3 points in the Whirlpool. We don't need more than 3 points because we're just using Maelstrom as a buff. Then, of course, we're taking Fury Strikes to get a little bit of attack speed on bosses, right? With Berserk stacks, the flat damage doesn't actually help us that much because we don't have that much generic percent damage. We have mainly melee cold percent damage, and we're not converting our Maul to cold, which means that we're not benefiting from this flat damage. So all we care about specifically is the attack speed. And like I said before, you want Deep Roar, so you want even more area on your War Cry, and that just makes it so it's huge, as you can tell, and that allows us to kill a very large amount of enemies very quickly. Now, we can talk about Maelstrom. Maelstrom's just haste and frenzy. We also get a large amount of global stun chance from the Maelstrom stacks, which allows us to stun Rye, and we take this point in Power of the Storm to apply armor shred stacks on Rye, or just in bosses in general, because applying armor shred stacks is definitely one of the weak points of this build, especially since we can't put armor shred on the suffix of these items, which sucks, but it's whatever. That's pretty much it for skills. Let's talk about passives that are important. The main passives that are important is you want to be grabbing all the HP as humanly possible that you can get. You want all the HP. The reason why is because we're sacrificing a few slots for health regen with the current setup that we have with like all the Tundra and stuff. That means that we need HP everywhere in all slots so that we can actually, sustain things, right? We definitely want as much HP as possible. Beastmaster here, the Beastmaster tax, like usual, with the Aspect of the Boar. Aspect of the Boar is really strong, though, for us, because not only does it give us a lot of DR, it also gives us a decent amount of health regen as well, so you definitely want that up. Then for Druid here, mainly we care about getting the Ellie pen here. That's 7% Ellie pen. That's great. And eventually we get even more pen up here, right? We definitely want Focus Wrath. It makes it so that we can sustain our Rage very easily. 6 points into Overgrowth for that nice 10 flat health regen. 8 points into Rageborn, so not only to cap us on crit, it also gives us some more Rage sustain. Hide Skin for as much HP as possible, like I said, EHP. Then 5 points in Impervious, as this gives us a lot of less damage taken from bosses, which is great. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now, let's talk about the gearing. Uh, so, the items required for this build, of course, is Shards of the Shattered Lance, Fragments of the Shattered Lance, and then the nice to haves are the Call of the Tundra, the Shattered Chains, the Siphon of Anguish. These two are a pair. Then, of course, Throne of Ambition as well for the massive 40% more cold damage and 40% armor. Now, let's talk about the gear in more detail. So, for the helmet here, we slammed health regen flat on our Call of the Tundra, so we can get a massive, like 37 health regen flat. This makes it so we don't have to focus on health regen flat on all of our other pieces of gear, which opens up our affixes for stacking HP instead, which means we don't have to sacrifice too much to gain all of our extra damage with the Shard of the Shattered Lance set. Then for the amulet here, we need shred somewhere so that we can apply shred stacks. You definitely want like exalted shred on your amulet, as you can get up to like 200% shred, and that would give us significantly more damage. I just didn't have one laying around, so I just went with cold pen, crit multi, and res, right? Chest here, I went for HP. The implicits are garbage. You would want, of course, crit multi while transformed, and then maybe like strength or something like that, or vitality. Vitality would probably be better because you just want as much flat HP as possible. You definitely want to be on the ancestral garb piece, because not only does it give you cooldown for your maul, it also gives you increased health. Now, of course, double shard of the Shattered Lance. I tried a few different setups, but I ended up just doing double shard of the Shattered Lance, because not only does it give us the 10 flat health regen on the affix of the item, it also gives us a very large amount of melee cold flat that forces our maul to be doing cold damage, so we don't have to worry about converting our maul to cold, which we can't, by the way. So that's nice to have the Shard of the Shattered Lances here. It just really synergizes with the rest of the kit that we have. And remember, we are tanking all those things while dual wielding. We take 15% increased damage, by the way. Uh, then Siphon of Anguish here. This is the one of the best items I currently own. I slammed it today. I took this ring after I crafted it, and I Rune of Creationed it, and then I slammed it on a 2 LP Siphon of Anguish that rolled really well, by the way. And guess what? This is what we have. Yeah, this is a really good ring. You don't technically need a ring as good as this. My blessings are all messed up, which I'll get into a moment here, which would fix part of this problem. Then for the belt here, just a shattered chains. You want a 1 LP one with some HP percentage on it, so that you can, of course, get as much HP as possible. There's a lot of free HP regen, HP percent there. Now, the reason why we're utilizing this is not only does Doom give us 16% increased damage taken by enemies, we also can get a massive 20% more melee damage on enemies, which is great. That gives us even more damage. And of course, as well, it gives us percent armor. It's a lot of free percent armor, a lot of free HP. So Shattered Chains ends up being our best in slot. Other ring here, crit avoid, lightning res, and then eventually like HP or strength or whatever on the prefix. Doesn't really matter. Then the gloves here. This is the perfect pair of gloves other than the 5% of health decay per second. I had this laying around. This is really good for us. We have so much HP regen that I afforded the fact that I could just slam this on and not care about the degen, because I have so much HP regen. You do not want the current health gained as word thing. You just want all the other affixes on this, because the area is really good for your maul and your war cry. The crit chance helps you cap on crit, and the HP makes it so that you can have a decent amount of HP in endgame. Now for the boots, of course, same thing. HP, make up for the fact that we're running health regen everywhere else. Now, as you can tell here, thanks to the fact that I'm running the Call of the Tundra and double shard of the Shattered Lance, I can still get well over 1,000 health regen even with this setup currently, even without like all of the investment with health regen on the suffixes of my items. And that's the most important part of this setup with Call of the Tundra, is we get to run all the hybrid HP mods and stuff like that, right? We get to run HP on our belt and all that. That's why this works so well. And that's why, of course, Swipe is such an insane buff with the health regen, is it allows us to do that. Then, of course, we have fragments of the Shard of the Shattered Lance. This is pretty much useless other than the HP regen percentage, but it's the set. We have to use it, right? It gives us a very large amount of percent damage. You can look at my, well, I'd have to go hack the dummy, but essentially it like like quadruples our damage or whatever. Like we get like well over 15%, 1500% increased melee cold damage. And then, like I said, for idols, Burn of Ambition, just a bunch of res idols to be able to fit my gear in, and some little bit of crit avoid. Eventually, when you get better blessings than me, as we'll show you in a moment, you definitely want to run more HP idols, just as much HP as possible, like hybrid HP, like this idol, so that you can get to like 4k HP or whatever. Because at this point, we have enough damage to do all the content end game and to face tank bosses. All we need to do is just make ourselves tankier so that we can tank more hits. Now, of course, if you wanted to go more for big dick DPS, you can go for health regen while transform percentage, or you can go for crit multi while transformed. Either way, that works. Now, let's talk about blessings. My blessings are garbage, not max rolled void res, garbage. You definitely want health regen from Grand Rhythm of Tide, lots of free damage and sustainability. No crit avoid from Dream of Terra, absolute ass. Um, you definitely want crit avoid instead of this, by the way. Then for here, armor, I don't even have the upgraded armor blessing. And then we have percent armor from, of course, Age of Winter. And that's pretty much it for the blessings. That's pretty much it for the build. With all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go do something else.